basic high-level introduction. Sorry. This workshop will be a basic high-level introduction to Git, GitHub, and its features, as well as working with those features on the command line, whether you're on Mac or on Windows. It is a workshop that is well suited for beginners as well as experienced users who want a revision of the basics. So with that said, let me introduce to you today's team. We have two speakers today. We have Leah and myself, Disha. And then we also have a wonderful team of our very own debuggers, Cheryl and Gobi. We have our chat moderator, Erina. So please feel free to reach out to them with any questions that you have, whether they're technical or non-technical, anytime during the workshop, so that they can send your questions to us. I also want to give a shout out to our awesome event promoter and marketing lead, Eileen. So this is the agenda for today's workshop. We're going to go over a very high-level introduction of what version control is, what Git is, and how it fits with version control. Next, we're going to look at Git versus GitHub, because people often confuse Git and GitHub, but they're two very different things. We're also going to have a very high-level look at the Git architecture and the Git workflow. Then we're going to move into the fun, hands-on demonstrations part of the workshop, where first we will have a brief introduction of the command line commands and everything you need to use. We'll also be covering everything you need to work on an independent project, as well as creating a repository on GitHub. After a short summary, we will then be present to answer any questions that you guys have for us that weren't answered during the workshop. Just want to give a small reminder before we begin this workshop. There were two prerequisites. One was to install Git, and the other one was to obtain a GitHub account. If you haven't done any of these already, do not worry. We still have around 10 minutes before we start with the hands-on part of the workshop. So you can even go ahead and install them right now. And I think we should be done before that. All right, with that said, let's get started with the workshop. Let's have a look at version control and Git. So version control. A version is a changed file. For example, if you edit a Word document and save it as mydocument.txt. Now you make some changes to that document and you save it again. This file, this newly saved file, is a version of the original file. And this is different from the original file. So why versioning? Well, we all make mistakes, right? And sometimes we want to undo our mistakes. So even a simple undo can be a new version of the file. So what is a VCS? A version control system is a system that records files and changes made in files, so that you can go back to older versions of that file whenever you want to. Basically, as you make changes to your file, you will save different versions of the file each time that you make a change. Version control allows you to revert back to a previous state, compare changes over time, see who modified the files. It also allows for easy debugging when you're working on a team, since you can see who raised an issue, what the issue was, and when they raised an issue. So what is Git, and how does it all come handy with version control? Git is the most common version control system that is used for files. It's not that good for images or just plain text, but it is definitely the best version control system for source code. It tracks the changes that you make to files so that you have a record of what has been done, and you can revert back to those specific versions if you ever need to. Git uses something that is called a DCVS, or a distributed version control system, where every user has his or her own repository. A repository is also called a repo for short, which is basically just a file or a repository that contains all the project files with the entire version history. So Git also makes changes to, on Git, the changes that you make on your code will be saved every time that you resave the file. And Git emphasizes on tracking change sets as opposed to just individual files. This means that, say, if I'm working on my code right now, and if I change 3 files at one time, every time that I push my code to GitHub, the 3 files will get uploaded at one go, instead of getting uploaded in 3 single goes. So now that we have a brief idea of what version control is and what Git is, let's look at what Git is and how GitHub fits in line with that. All right, so Git is a software that runs locally. Your files and their history are stored on your local machine, and you can use online hosts such as GitHub to store a copy of your files along with their version history or revision history on the internet. Having a centrally located place on the cloud where you can upload your changes and download changes from others is very easy when you want to collaborate with a team or more than one developer in general. GitHub acts as one such central source. Basically, it's the house for all of the Git repositories on the internet. GitHub is a cloud-based hosting service that mainly houses Git repositories, which are individual to a user. So you can upload any code that you want to a repository. You can use it to upload your course projects, your personal projects, even a simple Hello World program. Anything you code can be a Git repository, and anything that you have as a Git repository can be on GitHub. With that said, let's have a look at the Git architecture. Once again, I want to give a reminder if anybody has any sort of questions. I know that we're just at the theory part right now, but if you want to know more about something, if you have any more questions, if you feel like you need something answered that hasn't been covered, please feel free to either ask your questions to our chat moderator, Erina, or our debuggers, Gobi and Cheryl. All right, let's look at how Git works conceptually. Basically, Git works in a three-part architecture. We have a working area, a staging area, and repositories, mainly your local repository and your remote repository. The working area on your computer is done. The working area on your computer is anywhere that your work is done. So this can be anything where you write a code or basically any IDE. This can be IntelliJ, PyCharm, or it can even be a simple text file in your notepad. Create new files or exist modifying files in the working area. Finished work is then added to the staging area. Work is counted as finished when it has completed building or the tests for the features have passed successfully. Finally, a batch of work is ready. When it is ready and ready to be shared with the world or with your team of developers, it is committed to a repository. Remember, GitHub tracks change sets as opposed to just single files, which means that you can change a batch of files that are multiple files in one working session, and when you push them to your repository, all of them will get saved together. So start all of your work in your working area, which again is your local IDE, anything like IntelliJ or PyCharm. Once you create and modify those files, you need to log or add that as a change or update the previous version of your work. Those changes are then added to the staging area. From the staging area, you need to commit your changes to your local repository. Once you commit any changes, those changes are kept almost permanently on the system, even if you delete them, which means you should never add anything that can compromise your security or your application security or your company security, such as passwords, authentication tokens. Never commit anything that is sensitive to GitHub. Always hide them before you commit to your repositories. It is a best practice in modern software development to break up your work into smaller pieces and frequently integrate it with the rest of your team's work. Keep your commits as small as you can. Plan ahead to break up your work into small unitary commits, which means you should only commit one change or one major change at a time. Avoid ever leaving uncommitted work. Big commits are harder for others to review. You should push frequently to your repository. Why is that? Well, you don't want to lose even half a day's of work to something like hard disk failure, right? So always remember, commit early, push often. So it is now time to move on to the demo and the hands-on activities. This is again a friendly reminder to please ask any questions to our debuggers and our chat moderator if you have any at any point of time. I'm now going to hand on this presentation to my teammate Leah. Leah, over to you. Leah, I think you're muted.
Leah, I think you're still muted.
Hey, okay. So sorry about that. So I saw that there was a question here about Git Bash. I believe Git Bash is used on Windows, and it allows you to kind of emulate the Git environment for your Windows, but it also, I think what it also can do is that you can have Unix commands. So you'll notice when we're doing the command line stuff, if you're using Git Bash, you're gonna go ahead and follow my slides, or not my slides, but like the Apple commands, because using Git Bash, you can use Unix commands. So let me go ahead and share my screen really quick. And just kind of like if people can add in the chat while I'm sharing screens, how familiar do you think you are with the command line? You can put familiar or unfamiliar. You can rate yourself out of 10, like just so we know what kind of pace we should go with the command line. Let's see here. I changed the view a little bit, so I won't be able to see the chat questions. Oh, never mind. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So I'll go ahead and just adjust this really quick. Okay.
Leah?
What's up?
Sorry. I think we have a question if by Randy, if I have Git Bash installed, I don't need to install Git.
So
As far as I know, on Windows, you don't need to install Git if you have Git Bash installed, because like Git Bash installs Git along with that.
okay, fantastic. Anybody have any other questions? Oh yeah, and does everybody, could you give us like an idea whether you're familiar, not familiar with the command line, just so we know how fast we should go? Otherwise, I'm just gonna go pretty, I'm gonna walk through each piece. Okay, but if we seem all pretty familiar, I'll go ahead and go a little faster. Okay, that's enough, thanks. Okay, let's go ahead and view this in presentation mode. All right, so this next portion is gonna be us demonstrating, this is gonna be the demonstration part. And we're basically gonna walk through a little bit of the command line just because it's gonna be important to doing our Git commands and whatnot. We're gonna set up a local repo. We're going to set up your remote repo, that's your GitHub account repo. And then ultimately, we're going to add a file and eventually publish your code. So we'll go ahead to the next slide. So we'll get familiar with the command line. And just using, whether you're on Windows or Mac, we'll try to do our best to cater to the commands. And as you can see, everybody has their own nuanced set of commands. So we're just, the important thing is we have to be able to know where we are in the file hierarchy. We're gonna have to be able to navigate through the different files, and we're gonna have to be able to make either a directory or a file that's on your repo, your local repo. So we'll cover these just in a little bit more detail, these next slides. All right, so we're gonna first start by making sure you open your command line. And just to get an idea, was everybody able to download Git? Is that okay? I know there are a couple people who were waiting, we were waiting on for Xcode. Not sure if I see anything on the chat.
I have a GitHub account, but I'm still, struggling with installing it inside the system. Like, it's expanding the Xcode currently. I tried using the uh, this hash brew. I'm not able to do it yet.
Oh, with
Like,
Homebrew.
I'm not done yet. Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have somebody who are you running through an issue, or is it more like you're waiting for something to download?
I wasn't able to, download it using Hashbrew. Like, it says it has been installed, but there is no like, I'm not able to see where it is. Um, yeah.
So,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. Are you able to see what Git version you have if you run the command?
It's dash version. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Sorry, what was it again? It's Git.
I'm not
it's-
able to see the version actually.
Okay, so I think it's Git
It's
space.
2.29.2.
Oh, okay. I think you're good. If you see the version, then I think it's there. Yeah, thank you, Gobi. Gobi sent what the command is.
Git dash V. Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, well, let's go ahead and open our command lines. For the Windows people, you can open your command prompt. Somebody mentioned that they already have Git bash. You can just open your Git bash. For people who are using the terminal on Mac, you can just at your top right, there's a search bar, there's a magnifying glass, and then you just type in terminal and then just click it, and then you're good. But if anybody is having issues, just feel welcome to stop us and we can help debug you, okay? All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide. And the first part we're gonna go over is, for the command line, is print current directory. Everybody, each operating system has their different commands. So for a Mac, you're gonna do pwd. And for me, I have my terminal open right over here. And what I'm going to do is just first make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so if I want to know where I am, I'm going to do pwd, and it shows right here. This is basically the folder that I'm in the root folder. For Windows, that would be CD for you, just CD, and that's it. That would go ahead and print your current directory. And you may need this just in case you go through folders and you need to know where you are. But usually on the left side, if you see right over here, this left side, it usually says gives you some kind of clue of where you are. So this tilde means that I'm in the root folder of my hierarchy. And so that is where I am. We're going to go ahead and do the next command. Aside from pwd or cd for the Windows peeps, we're going to go ahead and look at show the files in your current directory. So for a Mac, you're just going to do ls, which is list your files. And you can see here I have all my different files right over here. For Windows, you're going to have to use dir to go ahead and show that. Let us know if you're having any issues or anything. So we can see just using this command, we can see our unhidden files, but later on we're gonna actually look at the hidden files. So for Mac, I'm just gonna do a list file, but I'm gonna do this -a right over here. ls-a, notice that there's these dot files. These are usually hidden. So we're going to use that a little bit later. Just keep in mind, but we learned, what was it, pwd or for Mac, just so I can see my root folder and to see the files that are inside my folder. So that's list file for Mac, dir for Windows, okay? All right. Anybody have any questions so far? Just on those 2 slides? We'll go ahead and move on. Okay. So if we want to change directories, we're just going to do a CD over here, and that's the same for either platform. So CD, I'm going to go change directories into my desktop right over here. Keep in mind that this is a relative way of going through. So I'm just going to change directories into my desktop. So I'm no longer in my root folder anymore. And I'm just going to do quick ls, and remember that's dir for Windows. And we can see here the files that are located on my desktop. So we're going to need to be able to go inside a file. If you need to get back to where you were in the past, so if you need to go up a root file, so I'm going to do cd ... and that should bring me back to my root file, or it'll just really bring you back up the file hierarchy. Okay, we'll move on. And lastly, we're going to go over mkdir. So that's the make a directory, and eventually we're going to be able to make a file, and that's different on different operating systems once again, but we'll touch on that later. All right, so this is the part where we're actually going to get through the git commands, but did anybody have any questions about the command line? Anybody have any issues, questions? Okay, I think we're good. I'm pretty sure that we're good. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get through these git commands right over here. Usually it goes through this order: the git init, git add, commit, push. It doesn't have to be the add, commit, push part is a little bit different, but you need to for sure start with a git init. And I'll go over each ones, and eventually it'll come to memory if you're not familiar with these particular commands, and but we'll just get as most familiar with it as we can. All right, so we do have the git commands, and what git init does is that it's going to initialize this local repository into the particular folder that we're in our current directory. When we do a git add, what that's going to do is, let's say if we have a file inside that directory, we're going to kind of stage it, as Disha mentioned before. We're going to stage that file so it could eventually be added or saved. And when you do this commit part right over here, that's where we actually save your change. And then eventually what happens is that we push it into your GitHub repository. But we're actually going to get into more detail as time goes on. Just remember, we go through this. This is a one-time thing. We add it, we commit, and then we push. At some point, we're going to set up your online repo. That's with Disha. And then link your local repository with your online repository. Anybody have any questions so far? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. All right, so we're gonna go through git init. That's your very first command. So git init is gonna be a one-time thing. Again, we initialize this local repository into your folder. So let me go ahead and just, oh, whoa, here. My apologies about that. Let me go ahead and go to the next one. It's going to be a one-time command, and we're going to go ahead and first make a directory. I'm going to choose to navigate to my desktop. You can choose wherever you want to put your file. It could be in your Northeastern folder if you have one. But for me, I'm going to go ahead and navigate to my desktop. So I'm just going to do a CD desktop, and I'm gonna do make a directory, so mkdir, and you can name this file any way that you want. For me, I'm just gonna do git demo. So in my desktop now, if I were to show or at least list the files, I should have my file git demo in here. Is everybody doing okay over there? Everybody made their file okay? mkdir? Okay, I'm gonna assume yes. Okay, so we're gonna do you make your file, and we're actually gonna go ahead and change directories into that file. So cd get demo. So if I do a pwd, that should be cd into, or it could be cd for Windows, but I'm just gonna go ahead and just see where I'm at. I'm in my desktop inside this git demo folder, and now that I'm in it, I'm gonna go ahead and just do a really quick git status. So keep in mind that we didn't actually initialize the actual repo. I'm just gonna do git status, and it says not a git repository or any parent directories. So we haven't initialized the repo. And this git status, what it does is that it kind of just shows what the status is on your your git repo. So since we haven't even made initialized one, we're getting errors, right? So now that we've run git status, I'm gonna go ahead and do our first command, which is git init. So let's go ahead and do git init. And there we go. So right here, I see initialize empty git repository user, and it shows there's a desktop. In my git demo, I actually have this .git folder. And keep in mind, I'm gonna do a really quick ls-a, or for if you're on Windows, then you would be doing a dir /a. I'm gonna go ahead and just show my hidden files. And notice that there's a .git subdirectory right over here. So that .git subdirectory, you can actually change directories into it, see what's inside. We're not gonna go into much detail about it, but that includes the metadata for you to be able to save all these files and get like a status of what's going, or just be able to save it, log everything that you need. So just keep in mind that once you press init, it's going to add a .git folder into your into that current directory. Does anybody have any questions so far? Everybody good? Is anybody having issues? Let me know. Maybe put it the other way around.
So there's a question, says, so we create the directory and initialize Git.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're gonna just make a folder. If you're having issues, like you can even just make a folder on your desktop and change directories into that folder. And then you initialize Git, which is the git init. Okay, cool. So it's definitely right here on the left side. You'll know, let me actually just run a git status right over here really quick. So notice how that's really different from the very beginning before we did that git init command. You see here by running git status after we press git init, we're on this branch called master. We haven't even talked about branches, but we'll kind of, it just to let you know, it just says that you're on branch master for now. There's no commits yet, but we didn't have, running a git status after doing git init, we don't have any errors, like a fatal error that came up. So that's actually a really good sign that you actually initialized it. And then for anybody who's interested, if you press git init a second time, it's not gonna mess up your repo. Usually you just do it one time though, just so you initialize your repository. Anybody else have any questions so far? Anybody have any issues? we kind of timed it out to make sure that we spend time to actually like make sure everybody's caught up. So git init every time we want to push to a repo. Oh no, you do not have to do that. You just have to do it one time. This is a one-time thing. So you do git init just so you can kind of like have this repository started. But then after that, all you need to do is you need to add commit and then eventually push. You can add commit, add commit, add commit, and then push. Yes, it's just like creating a place for it, yeah. And you'll notice things like later on, you're gonna be able to see all your saves that you do using gitlog. And so that subdirectory is gonna keep all of that information for you for once you save your files. Okay, really good questions, thanks. If anybody else is having issues, just let me know and we'll go ahead and stop. Oh yeah, and then here we were supposed to do git status. All right, so now that we've gone through git init, which initializes your local repository, remember we only did it once, we're gonna go ahead and add, we're gonna go ahead and stage these files. We're gonna add these files to a staging area, like Disha mentioned, and then we haven't even saved it yet, but we're gonna add these files. And keep in mind that you might not wanna add every single file because let's just say if you have a ginormous CSV, like I don't know, 1 gig CSV, and then you eventually push it into GitHub, you're gonna get some errors. So like, you might only want to add a certain file to stage, and even though the other ones are existing inside your file, you just want to just add that one file or 2 files or however many, so you don't save everything because you can have issues along the way. Okay, so we're going to do the next part. Keep in mind that we're still inside that git demo folder or that directory. We're going to make 2 files. So touch, okay, so we're, I believe that there's another, Disha, can you go ahead and put the command instead of touch? So for Windows, I believe it's type null. I think you have type null file.txt, if you see that right there. So if you have a type null file.txt for Windows, you can make a file, thank you. But then for all you Windows users, Unix commands, we're just gonna do file1.txt into this git demo, and we're gonna make a second one, file2.txt. Okay, so I'm making 2 files. You can do this on the command line. You can actually do this like with your mouse if you need faster when we're doing it. Everybody doing okay? Windows users, was that correct? Should be. Okay. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and now that we've created these 2 files, the next portion next thing that we're gonna do is we're just gonna do, once again, a git status. And keep in mind, now that we've added these 2 files, you see the words untracked files. So your Git repository knows that you have these 2 files there. For me, they're in red. It might be different for your command line, but they're in red and then they're untracked. So we haven't added it to this staging area, nor have not even saved it. So just keep that in mind. That these are untracked files. So we created them, they're untracked. Does anybody have any questions so far? We're good? Okay. Okay. Now this is the part, now that we've seen that our files have been untracked, we're gonna go ahead and add one of those files. So for me, you could have put file1.txt. I'm gonna just do a git add file.txt because I misspelled. So I'm gonna go ahead and add it into my staging area here. And we're gonna run another git status. So notice that there's a change. File 2 was untracked, and then my first file, file 1 that I actually added, it says new file here. And these are changes to be committed, so we haven't actually saved it yet. We just added it. And if you need to add more files, you could do that as well. And let me know if anybody has questions. Was everybody successful? Anybody have any issues with that? Okay. All right. So yeah, you'll know that it's added once you see that. If you, okay, looks good so far. Okay, great, great. You know, if you need to, you can actually remove it. And that's what this little, what's nice is that GitHub does this thing where they have little hints for you. So you can remove it if you need to, but we'll go ahead and move on. So we added it. Let's do another git status. Oh yeah, we already did that. Okay, so now that we've added the actual file into the stage, the next part for us to do is to commit it. And this is when you actually save it onto your local computer. Now keep in mind, this is not your online, this is not online, this is all local in your local repository. So I'm gonna go ahead and save my changes. So to do that, so keep in mind that we added one file. I'm gonna do a git commit. And for every commit that you do, you need to remember that you have to add a message every time that you do a commit. It's required. So to add your message, you would do a -m. And keep in mind here, I'm gonna put whatever sentence, I'll put whatever sentence, but keep in mind that the quotations need to be around there, because let's just say if I put a quotation in the very beginning and then I put in my sentence and forget to do a quotation mark, it does this weird thing, right? So you just wanna make sure you close your quotation marks. Okay. So I committed my message, and you can even see here one file changed, and that was the file.txt for me. And this is us actually saving it onto our computer. If we want to eventually see all the commits, all the saves that we did, you can actually press git log. So I'm doing git log right here. You'll notice this is my commit name, and then also I have saving file.txt. That was my actual message right over there. And as you build up commits, you can see your history. So that's git log right over there. Anybody have any questions? Any issues came up while they were doing it? Were you able to see git log okay? Okay. All right. So keep in mind that we initialized it. We initialized it once. We're adding our file, and then we actually saved it onto our local repository. What's going to happen next is from here, I'm gonna pass it on to Disha, and we're going to set up your online repo. So Disha, let's go ahead and move it to you. Yeah. Did anybody have any other questions about the git init add commit though? We're good?
Hey Leah, I just wanted to check. So basically, we can keep committing every time you're working, but you don't necessarily have to push your files, right?
No, actually, you may not even need to push it unless you want to publish it. So I know it has these, I'll talk about this later, but you do this git init once. You add a file, you do your commit, and then you can add it again. Like add that same file, let's say if you made a change. Let's say if you added like a comment and the inside, or put hello world. And then, so you add it again, that same file that you just added, and then you commit it. And then you put a new message that says, I saved a file, or I added hello world. And then it kind of goes in a circle, add, commit, add, commit. Keep in mind that this is only on your local repository. This only happens, like you could do it on an airplane. But when you actually do the push, that goes into GitHub itself. So you can publish it publicly. You can do a private one, but it's different. You have your local repository, and then you also have your online repository. So that git add commit is only saving these changes. And once you want to do like the whole big change, like to actually publish it, then you do your git push.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Okay. All right. So good questions. Disha, let's go ahead and move it to you. We'll go ahead and change screens.
Okay, thank you, Leah. All right, so does everybody see my browser open?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And can you guys hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So let's talk about creating a GitHub repository online. So I want you all to please go ahead and open github.com on your browser. Okay, so once you have your github.com open, this should be the page that you see. This is your GitHub homepage. Over here, you can see on the left, there is a menu that displays all of your repositories. So these can be either the repositories that you have created personally, or it can be repos that are shared with somebody else, like your team of developers or your project team. If you have a lot of repositories and you want to find one, you can find it using this handy search bar right here. But let's talk about creating a new repository, right? So there are two ways that you can create a repo. One is using this new button right here. And then one is with this plus button on the top nav right here. So keep in mind that this new button is only going to be here on the home page. However, this plus button is going to be here no matter what page you go to. It's on the navigation bar. So let's create a new repo using the plus button, and then you can go to new repository. And you guys should now see this page. Let me know if you guys are having any problems in the chat, or you can also stop me anytime, like put your mic on and let me know to shout it out. But okay, let's create a new repository for this workshop. You can see here that there's a small message right here that do you already have a project repository somewhere, import a repo. This is mainly done if you want to work on a repo that already exists, but since you want to create a new repo for this workshop, let's go ahead and create a new repo. However, before we create the repository, let me just tell you guys a little bit something about naming repos. GitHub repository names have to be unique to your account. This means that somewhere on the internet, a person can have the same repo name as yours on their account. However, you can have only one repo name on your account. So the repository name has to be unique to your own account. And secondly, it is very important to name your repository something meaningful. a good practice is to never name it something like example repo 1 or my first repo or something like that. Instead, always make it descriptive. For example, if your application is a food delivery application, name it exactly that. Name it food delivery repository. For this workshop, I'm just going to go ahead and name it DSC Git demo. Here you can see that GitHub does a small check if this name is available or not. Next, we can also add an optional description. It's useful to add a description to, tell the viewer what your repo is about when they first see your repo. So here I'm just going to add a repo, an example repo to learn how to create a repo. All right, this is completely optional. It's up to you if you want to add it. Next, you can choose to make this repository public or private. I'm just going to leave these two seen in case somebody wants to write it down. Okay, so you can choose to make this repository public or private. As the name suggests, a public repository can be accessed by anyone who has access to the internet. However, you have the power to choose who has access to commits and pushes inside your repository. A private repository is one in which you have the full power to choose who views and commits to your repository both. It is a good practice to keep your repositories private unless and until you know that in the future you want somebody to collaborate on that repository and you want it available on the internet. So let's make this repo private. And then lastly, you have to initialize the repository with one of the three things or multiple of these three things. The first thing is a README file. A README file is generally important because it doesn't create an empty repository. It becomes easy to clone this repository, which is something that we're going to talk about shortly. And secondly, a README file is also a good practice if you want to add any special instructions that a user must know before they are running your project. For example, runtime instructions or special libraries they need to download. So for this project, I'm just going to add a README file. You can also add a git ignore, which is something that we're not going to go about in detail right now. But if you have any questions about it, please feel free to leave them in the chat, or we can talk about it in our Q&A session later. And then lastly, you can have, sorry.
One really quick thing, Disha. So like, if we do add a README, it will have changes. Like, you know how we initialized our local repo? If you add a README, it'll actually change your online repo, and you're gonna have different repos. So like, I think a huge thing, if they do add a README, they might have to do a git pull before they actually
Got it.
do the online. So for now, let's just not do the add README.
Okay. Okay, got it. Thank you, Leah.
Just so that there's no merge conflict, or you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Got it.
So this is something for a future, like a future workshop. If you're interested, let us know how we're going to go through merge conflicts. But eventually we're going to have to, it's going to be this thing where you need to make sure that your online repo and your local repository, how they match, and sometimes you might have clashes. So for now, let's just initialize it without any files.
Got it. Thanks, Leah. Sorry for that, guys. And then, sorry.
Hey, Disha, sorry, I just had a quick question about that section. When I created the repo, mine just went straight without even asking me to initialize. Does that mean something?
As in you didn't view this right here, the initialize this repository with?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine. You can, I think it should ask you in the next step, or if not, it's not a problem either. So
okay.
Don't worry about that.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the repository. All right, so so this is what you get when you have a completely empty repository. And consider this to be the homepage of your repository. Now, one thing that I would ask you guys to do is open up your notepads and copy this link that you see right here. Let me highlight it. You should all see a link over here for your repos. Let me know if you guys can't see one. Make sure that HTTPS is selected. Does anybody have any problems viewing this link? Okay, just copy this link on your notepad and you guys are going to need to use it along with Leah and her demo that's coming up next. So let me just hand this over to Leah and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Okay, thank you, Deja. Let me go ahead and change screens here. Everybody see where we left off? Okay, let's go ahead and move on. Okay, so from here, we actually, here we go. Okay, so from here, once again, just a really quick recap. We did do the part where we set up our online repo after we initialized, we added our file, we saved it on our local repository. Now what we're going to do is we're going to link our current local repository with that GitHub account. It could be your CCS, it could be your query one, it could be your personal one. It has the same kind of like way of doing it when you're linking the two. So let's go ahead. And once again, from here, you already have your GitHub link saved when we were doing it earlier. So now that we have that link, what we're gonna do really quick, here's our next command. It's gonna be git remote. And right now, I'm just gonna do this, which is git remote -v. And given that we haven't even set a remote yet, you're going to notice I didn't have anything show up. So that means that I haven't actually linked my online repository with my local repository. So I'm going to go ahead and do that by doing this. I'm going to do a git remote add. And right here, I'm going to put origin. And some people might have questions what origin is. And then my link. So keep in mind that's git remote add origin and then my link. So keep in mind here, origin actually happens to be a really common name that people or that sometimes is just added as default to refer to your online repository. So really I'm setting my remote, how should I say this remote URL, and I'm calling that online repository my GitHub repository origin. You can name it anything, actually. You can name it Leah, or you can name it demo, whatever you like. But it just happens to be that a really, really common name for this is origin, which is really weird, right? Because you're going to have to send it to the origin. Did anybody have any questions so far just on? Oh. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and let me know if you were able to link it okay. And the way that you'll know, let me go ahead and do that. So I did the command, the git remote add origin my link. And then I'm gonna do a git remote -v one more time. So keep in mind, this is different from the very first time that I did it. So before, nothing showed up. And now, look here, I named my origin. and that is going to be where I'm going to push the link in, which I'm going to push my online repository. And I think there was a question before, could you do multiple? I think if you did something like git remote, add other name, and then other repository link, you may be able to push it into that other link if it happens to be your personal GitHub or happens to be like your Curry GitHub. Let us know if you have any questions. I can't really see anything in the chat right now. Just open it up.
I think we have a question about -v with Git remote.
What is -v with Git remote? Oh, so -v is like the, I think it has to do with like at least being able to see the,
Is the URL?
yeah, this is the URL that you set it to, because you can set your repository link to another repo if you wanted to, or you can actually have multiple remotes inside inside your repository, depending on like where you want to send it to, right? But git remote -v kind of like shows, hey, I'm just gonna see there's push here. We're gonna ignore this for now, but you see that we're gonna be able to push it into our online repository, which we just set up. Anybody have any issues with that? Just setting your git remote. You should be able to see, like if you do git remote space -v, once again, you should be able to actually see that link right there. It says origin, and then the link that we saved for that particular online repository. Okay. We'll go ahead and move on. So, all right. So now that we've linked the two, which is the repository, the local repository, with your online repository, we're going to go ahead and actually push your changes into your online GitHub account. We're going to actually publish it. So when we do publish it, just before, I'm just going to run another git status. I mean, this one does no harm. All it does is just show you what's on what we have here. Keep in mind, we still had file 2.txt. It's still untracked, but we still have file one inside the state, or we already saved it. So we're going to do one more thing, which is git push origin master. And once you do that command, you should be able to push your stuff into your repository. It's taking a little bit of time. Okay, there we go. So for me, I was able to push it into my repository online. And if you decided to name your repository something else other than origin that last time, or was it here? If you name this different, keep in mind that it has to be the same here. Git push blank, whatever you named it. And master is actually like, this refers to my local repository. So I'm pushing my stuff into the online repository, and it's coming from my master branch, which is like my stuff. If anybody has any questions, like, no worries. You can go ahead and type it in the chat. I hope everybody, did anybody get any errors? Was it good? I'd imagine at least one error would pop up. It says fatal. Can we have somebody take a look at that?
Sure.
Maybe if, I mean, it would be nice if somebody could just share their screen. What does it mean? It says fatal.
Yeah, I think we need a little bit more information on what the error says exactly. If you can copy and paste, or if you want to share your screen.
Yeah, you can go ahead and share your screen if you want. We can all try to figure out, it says fatal, what the reason is. It's a little bit hard to, okay, great. Go ahead and share your screen really quick. I'm gonna stop sharing. Are we good? Can we see it? Is this a Windows untracked file 1, file 2? Access rights origin does not appear to be a Git repository. Remote-v. Git remote add. Okay. Usage git remote add. I think it's because it didn't, do you see there where there's a git remote -v and you see nothing? Can you press git remote -v again? Git remote -v. Okay, so here, that means the remote hasn't been set up yet. So let's try that one more time. Just put git remote, do this, git remote add origin link. Because we're gonna name it. That's the name of your online repository. So you need to do git add remote, or git remote add origin, and then, okay, yeah, that's good. And then, yeah, that's a good sign. And so you should be able to push it from there. What was the origin for again? So that's the name of your online repository, your like GitHub repository. It could be your query account repository. You can name it anything that you want to. It just happens to be like a common, actually sometimes a defaulted name for your online repository, if that makes sense. But once again, you can name it anything. It just happens to be origin is a very, very common and sometimes defaulted name. Like if you were to git clone, I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with the term git clone, it like automatically turns your online repository name as origin. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Glad we were able to fix that up. Okay. Anybody else have any issues with that? Otherwise, we're gonna go ahead and move on. Okay, so you should know that if, you know, all went well, you'll be able to see it on your online repository. So go ahead and head to your browser. And you should be able, earlier, I think this was mine. If I refresh this or go back, I should be able to, like it says 25 minutes ago, because that's where I made my commit. I committed this 25 minutes ago, but I actually pushed it just a minute ago. So you'll know that it's in there if you actually see the file. I hope that worked for everybody. If it didn't, let us know if you had any issues, but we'll go ahead and move on. Okay. All right, so now that we've pushed it into our GitHub repository, just keep in mind that the flow, you initialize it at the very beginning. You can do an add file1.txt, commit it, save your file change, make sure you add that message. You can add your file1.txt again after you've made some kind of change, and then you commit it again. Maybe you're saving a different version. You can do that multiple times. And then finally, when you're done, you can do that git push origin master. Okay, and that basically finishes the whole workshop where we went over the basic concepts of GitHub and Git. we reviewed the basic commands for the command line. We set up the repositories online and local, and we pushed it onto GitHub. If there's
Excuse me.
Oh yeah, what's up?
So when you type git push origin master,
Yes.
so the origin is the name of the remote, right?
Yes, really weird.
Yeah, and what about the master?
Okay, so that's a very, very good question, because your master, actually, let's go ahead and let me see here. If you see my screen here, oh, let me go get status. Doesn't show anything. So when you run a git status, if you see here at the bottom of my screen, bottom right, you're gonna see that you're by default on branch master. And even if I were to do something like git branch right over here, I'm on branch master. So this is definitely a topic that we can kind of just go on and like, you could spend a long time talking about this, but master is the branch that that you are defaulted on. So all your stuff, all your changes are actually being saved in your master branch. Maybe this might be a good future workshop, but you could have other branches aside from the master branch. And a lot of times you can do it, you know, while we're collaborating with other people. But right now we're only working with the one branch, which is your master, and that's where you're saving all your files. And like branching is going to be like a totally different, like definitely another workshop. And let us know if you want to know what branching is.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. You can actually see on GitHub, when you start your github.com, you're going to be able to see like there's a master branch too. You're going to have a master branch on your local repository. You have a master branch on your GitHub. So that's where it gets kind of weird, but we definitely, if you're interested, we can go ahead and do a future workshop. Okay.
Hi, Leah.
Oh yeah.
Just 1 second. I see the polls are up for the question about the Git Part 2 workshop. I don't know if you receive it, but I got it on mine, I think. So I think, yeah, if everybody can fill that out. There's going to be another survey about the workshop for you to fill out later. Just wanted to throw it out there, but sorry to interrupt.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, no worries. And so like, yeah, for this particular GitHub workshop, you're going to do the extremely basic stuff. But like in the future, actually, when you're in classes, you're going to get pushed into working with different branches and like doing merge, fixing merge requests. You might be even struggling through that right now. If you have any questions, you know, we'll leave it to the end, but we'll try to help as best as you can if you have any issues. But yeah, looks like we have interest for another one. So we're going to go ahead. Oh, we're going to ask you to please fill out the post-event survey. Is that different? That's the email that you're talking about, Cheryl, right?
Yes, that's going to be an email that's going to be sent out in about 25 minutes. So right after this workshop, a few minutes after that, it'll be sent out on your email. Please fill it out so that we can get some feedback about what you think of the workshop. But for this one, the poll is just like a quick poll just to kind of see if there's any interest on the part 2, the Git workshop.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I see. And looks like people are interested. Is there any particular topic that anybody's interested in for the future workshop? Whether it may be, I don't know, best practices or branches or collaborating with others, how to fix your merge conflicts. I think that I pulled my hair out for one of my classes for that.
Yeah, I think conflicts and merging between branches and stuff would be valuable.
Yeah, for sure. So that we'll definitely put that. If anybody is actually interested, should we leave it to you, Cheryl? I can keep it up here.
Sure. Okay, so yeah, we are looking for a tech lead. So if anybody is interested in hosting or leading a workshop, just kind of like what Leah and Disha are doing today, that would be great. Please fill out the application there. And we have the solution challenge projects coming up to later on, I think next semester, and the tech lead would be mentor for that as well. So that would be great. And what, can you go to the next? Yeah, so if you can join our community, we have our Slack channel. If you haven't signed up already, please do so. Like I mentioned earlier, the recording of this workshop will be posted on there, as well as the slides for your reference. So you can fill that form up, and then I can add you to the Slack channel. The website is actually for our mailing list. So if you want to get email notifications for our upcoming events, you can go ahead and fill out like your email there. And then you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Go ahead and go next. I don't know if there's any more after this. I think that's it. I just want to thank everybody for coming, and I want to thank Leah and Disha. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation and for all of your help today. I hope this workshop is helpful, and I hope to see you all in our next event. So yeah, thank you so much.